This totem pole, known as the Gapskolaks pole, has stood for 77 years at the Museum of Ethnography in Stockholm, Sweden. For the people to whom this pole belongs, the Haisla of Canada's northwest coast, the steel collar holding the pole firmly in place has long been a painful symbol not only of the loss of this cultural heirloom itself, but of an imprisoning of the spirit of the Haisla. After 15 years of negotiations, the government of Sweden agreed to return the pole. But the museum maintained its long-standing precondition that a suitable, environmentally controlled facility be built by the Haisla to house the fragile pole. However, over the years, as the Haisla told their story of the importance to them of the pole's return, the people of Sweden listened, and an empathetic alliance was forged. Public pressure mounted, and the museum relinquished the precondition. It will, in fact, be the first time that a totem pole has been repatriated from overseas by a First Nation. A delegation of Haisla returned to Stockholm to bear witness to the beginning of this epic journey, 77 years and thousands of miles in the making.
Good to see you, long time.
The delegation are first invited to participate in the installation of the replica pole, carved by the Haisla and gifted to the museum to replace the original. Though honored to participate in the ceremonial raising of the replica, the Haisla are concentrated on the original Gapskolaks pole, awaiting them inside.
Sawineganis, Quistis in a Gerasasso. Ik eet in Wacharapanis. Ik ga mis Jegelisuche.
Some of the Haisla are now seeing the pole for the first time.
Go je line Garapanisi. Wach meneer Nou, ik doe dat Mami Kasja Quitlisti.
Sam is the representative of our hereditary chief in Kitimat, the sea. And what you heard was a prayer with respect to the Gapskolaks pole coming home. The spirits of our ancestors are waiting and will be very pleased when this totem pole comes home to where it belongs. The spirit of our people, the Haisla Kanakshiala people, will be woken up with the return of this pole.
Today, the old pole has been set free. It is no longer in shackles. It is very symbolic of the history of First Nations people whose history has not been kind, but things are changing in bringing cultures together and understanding each other, that we are all the same. We are all of one creation. We are brothers and sisters as the Creator intended us to be. As the eagle down is soft, so shall our friendship be. I thank you.
This specially designed climate-controlled shipping crate removed the long-standing major obstacle to the pole's return: the museum's fundamental concern for the preservation of the fragile pole. Thus, the crate functions as a temporary museum-quality storage facility, protecting the pole until such time the Haisla can build a cultural center in Kitimat village to house it. Songs, prayers, and spirit calls are offered to the pole for its long journey home. After a 9,000-mile sea journey via the Panama Canal, the pole arrives in Vancouver at the Museum of Anthropology for a stopover on its way home.
It's definitely a historic day.
Though anxious for its homecoming in Kitimat village, the Haisla have agreed the pole will remain here for another 2 months, for reasons that are political as well as practical.
I think it was the right decision to leave in Vancouver for a time period. Plus, there's a little bit of a selfishness in it. We didn't want this story to kind of disappear from off people's radar screen. We wanted people to continue to understand, because it's an international story. It's a story of repatriation, and the big word right now in BC is reconciliation. And we thought that this story could continue to facilitate that discussion.
Yeah. Okay, ready? Yep. Way!
The Haisla requested some private time with the pole, away from the glare of the media. Dan Paul, the current holder of the hereditary title of Chief Gupskoloks, is himself now seeing the pole for the first time.
You've returned home. You're finally home. Okay.
The formal ceremony this evening marks a continuation of the long and mutually respectful process of totem pole diplomacy and friendship that has evolved between the Haisla, the museum, and the people of Sweden.
We've been down many paths in our history. Some of them good, some of them not too good. And I've always maintained that our mission must be to create better stories together, to create stories that we can be proud of to tell our children.
Now, with the return of the Gupskoloks pole, both the Haisla and Swedish people have a good story to tell their children. The director of the museum in Stockholm is here to formally transfer ownership of the pole to Dan Paul. The Gupskoloks pole is a mortuary pole, a gravestone, carved in 1872 in commemoration of the calamitous deaths of the people of Chief Gupskoloks. The legend of the pole is a story of resurrection. The family and tribe of Gupskoloks woken up as they lay dead in the trees, then brought back to life by the good spirits Zola and Zuda. The figure of Zuda sits atop the pole. Zola and Zuda are working once again among their people. The long, sometimes arduous process of negotiating the pole's return became a catalyst for cultural revival, breathing life once again into the Haisla people, renewing their enthusiasm to maintain their cultural identity. The celebration this day in Kitimat village is the end result of a determined effort by a community uniting together, working to reclaim an important part of their cultural heritage. The Haisla have invited the sponsors and organizations who partnered with them in the repatriation process, as well as neighboring First Nations, to come and celebrate with them.
We probably had 1,000 people in our little recreation center, and it was one of the most electrifying experiences of my time throughout the entire process. You felt the power in the songs of our friends from Niska, our friends from Bella Bella and from Clemtu, and all the other people that came to join us. The process, just seeing and feeling the emotion and the attachment to this pole. I mean, it was just one of those moments you treasure forever.
The Gupskolaks pole is now home, but still, a cultural center in Kitimat village to house the pole is a few years away. Not wanting to simply store the pole in its crate like a coffin, the Haisla turned to their neighbors in the town of Kitimat. The owners and management of the city center mall offered to host the pole and display it so that its story can continue to be told and shared.
You have become a family member of the old pole. The old pole has drawn many, many people from all walks of life. And knowing that the old pole is an invisible umbilical cord to our ancestors, and we share the old pole with you and with the children, especially in understanding our history and where we come from.
From the beginning of the process to negotiate the pole's return, the Haisla have maintained the importance of the pole as a teaching tool for their children.
Today, our young kids from the Haisla Community School are going to come to hear some stories with respect to the totem pole and the family behind the totem pole, and just to learn the history of it. My name is Kudaghe, and we have Chief Gupskolak, Wached, Amalacha, Kwabel is Echtupra. I'm using our Haisla and Kanaxila names because today we're going to share your history with you. This totem pole is your history. It belongs to all of us now.
Are you going to put the pole back up?
Good question. Are we going to put the pole back up? The answer is no. Once the pole has been taken down, we never bring it up again. So when it's placed in the cultural center, it will lay in this position and allow Mother Nature to take its course.
You see that? Yeah. That was right here somewhere. It was around the totem pole, okay? And they had this wires to four corners. And as you get older, you'll start to hear stories about residential school, about how our people were treated and prevented from learning to speak Haisla because they wanted to make us like everybody else. It's now off, right? So you guys here, that you have the opportunity to learn to speak our language, you have the opportunity to listen to people like Louisa tell about our history.
The Haisla are determined no such yoke will be around the necks of their children, constraining them. They are a generation free to embrace and live their cultural traditions, as was evidenced at the homecoming celebration.
This was the yoke that held up the totem pole in Sweden. When Louisa, myself, and John Pritchard first walked in to the totem pole, and we were the first Haisla connection to see it since it left in 1929, the symbolism of what we saw hit us between the eyes and right in the heart. The guy wires that were holding it up, the pole up, and the yoke around its neck, to me and to Louisa, were very symbolic of what the history of Native peoples in general, and particularly the Haisla, has been since contact. Well, it's now off. And I think it's a huge victory, not just for the Haisla, but for all Indigenous peoples in North America. It's a little victory.